Welcome to R&R Living Life. In this episode, Rick and I learn more about the defence of Australia during World War II, drive along a narrow razorback ridge in the Cape Range National Park, and get to see some turtles frolicking in the shallows off the tip of the Northwest Cape. We begin by making our way to Exmouth, about 95 kilometres further north on the tip of the Northwest Cape and the Exmouth Gulf, over 1,270 kilometres from Perth and 780 kilometres from Port Hedland. What a morning we had been having! After leaving Bullara Station, we crossed sand ridges along the Burkitt Road before reaching the turn-off onto the Bullara-Exmouth Road. We were now driving parallel to the ridges and were travelling through rich red sand dunes, some covered with spinifex. As I looked out towards the northeast, the countryside appeared to be covered in dew, but it was only the spinifex in flower and the early morning sunlight. The shiny Droughtmaster cattle looked in good condition in amongst the termite mounds. At one stage I had not seen any trees for quite some distance, so was surprised to see one next to the road. About 30 kilometres from Exmouth, we passed the RAAF base Learmonth, one of 3 bare bases that can be used for exercises or operational requirements. The base was established in the 1950s to provide support for land, air and sea operations aimed at securing Australia's northern approaches. During World War II, the then Learmonth Airfield, also known as Potshot, provided protection for the US Navy's submarine base in the Exmouth Gulf. It also housed a variety of Air Force radar stations, providing early warning of enemy. We stopped at Potshot Memorial, the Spartan base that was developed as a submarine advance base and rest camp. If there had not been submarines, Operation Potshot, an Australian base, or the Learmonth airstrip, there would be no wartime history here. While the Exmouth Gulf ultimately provided an unwelcoming home for the US Navy's submarine fleet, there is still no question that they were the primary reason that during the Second World War they had such an impact on the northwest coast. With large numbers of Japanese invasion barges on Timor, Exmouth Gulf provided more time for patrol and better protection for the threatened northwest of Australia. A bizarre mix of craft, both large and small, plied this coastline, pulling into one of the jetties, landing pontoons, mooring points, or anchoring offshore and unloading by barge. We then moved on to Cape Range National Park. Wow, what a stunning place, with ancient cliffs and canyons so deep that in some places we could not see the bottom. The Charles Knife Canyon Drive takes you along the top of the canyon with breathtaking views from either side as we wound our way up to the top of the range. The narrow road got my heart pounding, as sometimes it was only a car width wide, with steep drops on either side of the road, where we could not see the bottom. What an experience! We had travelled some very narrow and winding roads, both bitumen and gravel before, but this was next level. Absolutely stunning and heart-pounding. We followed the razorback ridges of the range, providing breathtaking downward views into stark multicoloured gorges and across stunning views to the Exmouth Gulf. Rick was so focused on the road going up that in places he didn't get to see the massive drop-off on the side of the road until we came back and he had a better view from some of the crests. We stopped at several scenic lookouts along the 11-kilometre gravel part bitumen road, providing fantastic scenery and time for me to take more photographs. The limestone gorges were massive. The sheer cliffs, rugged terrain, rocky outcrops, not to mention the changes in the colour of the cliff faces, was unbelievable, even down to the layering of the rocks interspersed with rocky crags and bluffs. When we looked back towards the east, we could see the shimmering waters of the Exmouth Gulf, and to the south-east the airport. The scenery was so stunning, not to mention picturesque. The park occupies the western side of the Northwest Cape Peninsula, over an area of 506 square kilometres. Along the west side of the Cape Range National Park, there are a variety of campsites on the coastal fringed reef, the Ningaloo Reef, with its pristine coastline surrounded by the vast untouched landscape of the Gascoyne region, while we were on the eastern side of the Cape facing the Exmouth Gulf. It would have to be some of the most spectacular scenery we had seen on our travels. From Cape Range National Park, we made our way to Exmouth, made prominent in the 1960s when it was selected as the location for the new low-frequency radio station to provide communications for US submarines. The town was established in 1967 to support the nearby United States Naval Communications Station Harold E. Holt, a joint operation between the United States of America and Australia, consisting of 13 towers in all, of which 12 are set in a star shape covering an area of 400 hectares. The 13th, known as Tower Zero, is located in the centre of the star and at 387 metres was for many years the tallest man-made structure in the southern hemisphere. The station provided very low-frequency radio transmission to the United States Navy and the Royal Australian Navy ships and submarines in the western Pacific Ocean and the eastern Indian Ocean. In 1992, the communications station lease was taken over by the Australian Navy Communications Section, taking on the lead operational and maintenance roles. Late in the 1970s, Exmouth began hosting United States Air Force personnel assigned to Learmonth Solar Observatory, a defence science facility jointly operated with Australia's Upper Atmospheric Prediction Service. The town is serviced by Learmonth Airport, the location of which was first used as a military base during World War II, as after the retreat from Java in March 1942, Allied naval forces required a forward base for replenishing submarines, then the sole form of offensive warfare against the Japanese. As Darwin and Broome were too exposed to air attack, a 500-ton unmotorised lighter was placed as a refuelling barge near the mouth of the Exmouth Gulf, where the Allies were already maintaining a seaplane tender. History we did not learn about at school or from our parents. We found Operation Jorwick an interesting piece of history, when on September the 2nd, 1943, Z Special Unit, a joint Allied Special Forces unit comprising 14 commandos and sailors, stained their skins brown and boarded a former Japanese fishing boat renamed Crate and left the jetty for Singapore. 3 weeks later, the slow-moving wooden vessel arrived about 11 kilometres from Singapore, where the team launched 3 two-man collapsible canoes and paddled into Singapore harbour. In the dark of the night, they attached limpet mines to ships anchored in the harbour, skipping away into the night before being spotted. The mines exploded, sinking 3 ships and damaging 4 others. Having paddled 80 kilometres in 6 days, the exhausted men finally rendezvoused with the Crate, once again, motoring back to Exmouth, arriving triumph on the 19th of October. In September 1944, a similar operation, Rimau, was planned and put into operation, but with disastrous results. Sadly, not one member of this party survived. All ultimately died of disease, were killed in skirmishes with the Japanese, or were executed as spies. For all its bravado and valour, Rimau was as big a failure as Jacwick was a success. History lesson number 2 for the day. On the Cape's northwest coast was Jurabai Coastal Reserve, where we stopped in at the SS Madura wreck, about 80 metres offshore, before moving on to the Flamingo Lighthouse and then the Turtle Eco Education Centre, where we went for a stroll along the beach enjoying the tidal rock pools. The beach is a seasonal nesting ground for marine turtles, with sightings of green, loggerhead and hawk-billed turtles during the summer months. In 1907, the SS Mildura, a cattle steamship, was wrecked off the coast while carrying 481 bullocks bound for Fremantle when she ran aground while travelling at full speed and having veered off course during cyclonic weather and clipped the northwest reef. Given the rough conditions at the time and the ship seemed wedged firmly on the reef, the crew sat tight for several days. 6 days later, the SS Burrumbete arrived, and all remaining passengers and crew and anything of value was transferred across. But what was to happen to the cattle? Many had already died due to thirst as the water tanks had been damaged. What remained were herded overboard in the hope that they would swim to shore, but most were too weak and drowned. The Mildura's ultimate demise led to a review by the government of the day to install a lighthouse structure on the nearby Verminga Head, having not even been considered as a recommended place for future lighthouse locations. I was excited to see some sea turtles playing in the water not far off the beach from the wreck. Our next stop was at Verminga Head Lighthouse, built on the northwest tip of the Northwest Cape in 1912 and stands 61 metres above sea level. 2 lighthouse keepers' quarters was also built below the hill to the north, while a tramway with horse-drawn trolleys was provided to bring stores from the beach landing to the southwest. The light was discontinued in 1967. The ruins of a World War II radar tower is a short distance north of the light tower. During construction of the Verminga Head Lighthouse, conditions were appalling. Drinking water was very poor quality, and with men suffering from dysentery and 1 man dying. Eventually, the lighthouse was completed, and on the 10th of December 1912, its light was beamed out into the night. In 1943, the RAAF established a radar station near the lighthouse as part of Operation Potshot, with civilian staff evacuated and the quarters taken over by men from Unit 310 Radar. During World War II, the wreck of the Mildura was used for target practice by the submarine USS Crivelli. At the Turtle Eco-Education Centre, we kept a lookout for kangaroos, emus, echidnas and birds of prey in amongst the acacia and spinifex, but unfortunately we did not see any signs of wildlife. Not my lucky day, but I did enjoy the centre as it was jam-packed with information and displays about the marine turtles found along the Ningaloo coast. To think that in 1618 the Dutch East India Company ship Mauritius landed near Northwest Cape, adjacent to what is now Exmouth, and named Willem's River, which was later to be renamed Ashburton River. There was so much to see and do in this area of Western Australia that I had never heard of before this visit. It really was a wonderful experience, and I had only just learnt such a very small part. Before heading back to Bullara, we had lunch in a little cafe in the centre of town. Again, history played a huge part in our day, as did the geology of the region. Charles Knife Canyon, those limestone cliffs in the Cape Range National Park were unbelievable, not to forget the turquoise waters of the Indian Ocean and the turtles playing in the shallows of Velf Bay. The sheer size of the radar installation was something I had not expected. Exmouth had been a great place to visit, even if it was only for a day trip. Maybe next time we will pencil in more days in the area. The day had been an incredible experience, with a staggering amount of history, nature and stunning scenery, but it was not yet finished. Later that afternoon we made our way back to Bullara, with my mind still swimming with what we had seen. on past the Learmonth Solar Observatory, jointly operated by the Bureau of Meteorology, the Australian Space Weather Forecasting Centre, and the US Air Force. The observatory is the site of one of 6 solar velocity images in the Worldwide Global Oscillation Network Group. Observing equipment includes instruments that provide data on the interior of the Sun, an optical telescope to monitor sunspots and solar activity, a radio telescope with 3 parabolic dish antennae to monitor solar radio flux, and a solar radio spectrograph used to monitor solar radio bursts. What a day it had been! On arriving back at Bullara, we certainly had a lot to think about as we sat and enjoyed the sunset. Rick and I relaxed and spent time revisiting and comparing the highlights of our day, especially as I often have the camera focused on scenery more than reading and taking in the information presented, sometimes just the bare facts for me. Rick and I did enjoy our stay at Bullara, though I had been looking forward to seeing cattle in the yards and dust flying, as usually happens on a cattle station. The following day we left Bullara Station and began the next leg of our journey towards Onslow. We followed the Bucket Road east over numerous causeways as the country drained into the Exmouth Gulf, and on past Bullara Station that operated as a sheep station before being acquired by the Department of Conservation and Land Management in 2022 and is now managed as a national park. The pastoral lease occupies an area of 2,676 square kilometres, of which about half is sand plains, and the rest is made up of dunes, limestone plains and stony plains, all of which were suitable for grazing. The station was originally established in 1888, with the homestead commencing to be built in 1910, with an extension to its present size in 1916. By 1930, the property was carrying a flock of 44,000 sheep and produced a clip of 700 bales of wool during shearing. Gorola turned to tourist accommodation after being acquired by the Department of Conservation and Land Management. We will leave you for this episode as we join the North West Coastal Highway, having made it about a third of the way to Onslow. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. Join us next time as we explore Onslow, nearly get bogged in the deep soft sand around Old Onslow Township, see the huge construction needed to upgrade the roads for the automated trucks carrying ore to the port, and witness stunning sunsets and sunrises. Give us a thumbs up if you have enjoyed this episode. Take care and stay safe. Cheers for now. Rick and Rosemary. R&R, Living Life.